Hello and welcome to what is definitely the Gold One category for the Dirt Racing Series. Season 4, Race 3. We're on the Muckle course in Scotland. And it's going to be onto a points race today. Just going to quickly show you the team standings. You might have already seen them last week, but this time it's actually for the correct league. So we've got Alpe Fuori, we've got Gold 1. So in first place, winning again last week, was Team NL Gold 1. Fuori are in second, coming second both weeks. Strong competition for them. Narrowly behind, they're going to be pushing them hard again today. Then we have ZR Scott in third, Team NL Gold 1. Just like the other Team NL Gold 1, but without the MEA section apparently. They're in fourth place, joint with Powerpuff Dirt in their pink Merc kit. Then we have Rhino's Ivory chasing them down. Team Electric Spirit down in 7th. Velos down in 8th. Southborough District Wheeler Bees in 9. Pain Cave Heroes. And then Team CLS. So we've got a lot still to play for. We're only on stage 3, race 3 of 6. The last stage will be doubling up. I've got a very interesting and varied course for you today. So on the Muckle course, we've got 2 sprint segments, although some of you might find them to be a bit climby for your liking, especially the heavy sprinters. And they've got 1 climbing segment. There are 6 actual segments on the course, but we're only covering 3 of them today, starting off with the Breakaway Bray Reverse, which is a first across the line segment, 450 metres. It's short, it's punchy, and it flattens out at the top, which catches a lot of people by surprise, especially the early attacks who don't have anyone to draft. Then we're going to follow that up with the Sker Summit North, which is definitely a climb. It's on the dirt section, it's long, and for these rides we're looking maybe around 4.5, 5 minutes, maybe even longer. So we've got an assigned bike today. It's the Pinarello Dogma F. So no chance of swapping to the gravel, which makes it fairer for people on different systems who aren't able to necessarily do it in the same speed or possibly do it at all for those on Apple TV, short of getting off and playing around. So it kind of evens it out, but it makes the segment, takes out one tactical element, but brings in a whole host of others with wheel choices. And then generally, rather than just waiting for the dirt riders to take FTSs, it's open to the road bikes, so the front group can go for it. People will slow up, possibly start towards the back, push their way to the front on the long climb, and take some kind of advantage there. Then we're going to come all the way down that, another go over the castle kicker, so these little lumps you might be able to see at the bottom, go over that at least 3 times, which is rather unpleasant, short, sharp, and as we come down the categories it's going to hurt more and more as it's longer and longer, especially at the 10% plus it gets up to. As we come down there we're going to be going into the Breakaway Bray normal side this time, so it's a bit gentler gradient and a bit more consistent. There's the kick around the bends, it's a little bit longer, it's going to be first across the line again. We saw it earlier, it's questions whether there's going to be any breakaways carrying on all the way from the Sker Summit North to the Breakaway Bray. It's a long way to go, but definitely possible if people have taken a lot of time out. We're up to 45 riders so far in this pen, so it's a relatively small group, allows for more tactical racing. As we farm smaller groups out the front, it's going to get very interesting if people try and go long. It's a very bumpy course, it's definitely possible, but it'll take a lot of hard work. After we've come through the Breakaway Bray with the Fell section, we get to see the castle yet again. For those who haven't toured it enough, you're not paying the National Trust this time, so free entry for everyone taking part. That's why we get multiple trips to see it. And then we go into the Sker Summit South, and that's a road climb. We start off with the, I don't want to say gentle because it's not, but it's treated gently, 4-5% climb up, bit of a flatter section around the edge of the roundabout, and then the immediate steep kick up, which is very damaging if you don't punch hard and hold that speed. And that's where you might see another long breakaway. We saw it earlier today in the Platinum Plus. 2 riders going hard, breaking away up there, staying away to the finish, before we come into the crit circuit, and on the relative flats to the finish, with a couple of punches at the Clyde kicker, and little bumps, and then into the champion sprint to finish. So I'm going to jump into the live stream now. So in this category, the Gold One category, we've got a mixture of riders, generally Bs and Cs. predominantly the kind of lower watt kilo Bs, but we do have 1A for Team NL Gold 1. And you might see some interesting tactics with the variety of 20-minute pace, especially on a course like this, where there's a big old difference between some of the kind of punchy, sprintier Cs, who are in this category because they're great sprinters and maybe tactically good, experienced riders, versus kind of some riders who maybe aren't as good in a sprint, don't necessarily have that raw power, but can hold it for so much longer, where it'll play into their hands a bit more if they can go for a breakaway here. And it's where the tactics come into play a little bit more, as with the punchy riders, the course will suit them. We can come constantly up and down, but if those kind of fitter riders who might want to go long can get a breakaway, get 5-10 meters up the road without anyone reacting, then they might be able to just grind their way out to the finish as people sit in ready for the next punch up. So here you go, 10 seconds to go. We've got a bit of a gentle start today. No immediate segments, as sometimes you find on this course going to Champion Sprint. We'll see if anyone tries anything long all the way from the start. Spot Douglas cooking now on the Electric Spirit, well, the Team Electric Spirit founder. So we're being led off by Doug Morris of ZR Scott. So ZR Scott have sent a couple of riders straight away to the front, and they're really bunching up there. It's interesting this time of tactics, as they're having to jump on a move straight away back to me. Not what you want to see. I think you've already had enough. Mind that you can just put this on mute if you want and just watch the racing, if you're fed up of me already. We see one of the Gold 1 riders for Team NL just pushing a bit off the front, possibly trying something, possibly just getting caught up with all the excitement of Zwift races starting out stupidly hard, and then the relief that, you know, in the dirt racing series people are a little bit more switched on, a little bit more sensible, and realise it's not going to do anything for you. So we've got 50 riders starting off, and what's good to see, we've got all 50 out the pen. No issues. Just kind of one of the frustrations you regularly get with Zwift racing, on something that the organisers here try to work on to make it a better experience for everyone. And so that's why you have 8 riders able to sign up for your team and take part, but only the top 4 riders' points count, which allows for, you know, real life to happen, people to have issues, technicals to go on without absolutely destroying your team's chances, possibly even disqualifying them, etc., as you see with some series when you go below the minimum number. So we start out quite gently on this course. There's a little bit of an incline, but it's one of the kind of nicer, calmer sections. And once we start hitting those segments, it's one punch after another, after another, after another. It's really non-stop for the riders, and there's not much chance to breathe and recover. We might see in this division, in this category even, that it's a little bit slow. We have a little bit more time between the segments, but again, it's not going to be enough to kind of get a full recovery. You'll see riders who have gone hard in some of the early segments starting to suffer as the race goes on, especially with how sprinty some of them can be. Now, one thing that'll be interesting to see, with the slightly slower speeds and sprints than we saw earlier in the Platinum Plus, as you'd expect, you might see different tactics start to emerge, especially with these sprints. So we tend to find on these sprints where it flattens out over the top that you want to be moving forward quickly on the steeper sections, building speed, well, carrying speed into them, building speed and starting quite deep. But with these kind of slower group speeds, there might be a bit of an advantage to really kicking hard up some of those sections and going solo. Whereas in the quicker pace groups, that just doesn't happen. See some of the Team NL riders just pushing the pace again. And Scott holding 4.42 watts per kilo, which for a lot of these riders is well above their 20-minute PBs. And so on, it's going to hurt them, but maybe not the most sensible place to do it on these 1% inclines at 40 kilometers an hour, where there's a ton of draft. See him all the way up back to 5.1 watt per kilo and barely moving back through the group. So it's a bit of a waste of effort, but it's keeping people honest, making them work hard early before we hit the segments. So when we reach the top of this section, see one of the stags looking over the forest of Scotland there. We have a long downhill into the castle, punch over there, downhill again, then it's slight 1-2% up and downs before we hit the base of the breakaway bray reverse. Again, because it's a long downhill, it's unlikely that we're going to see any successful breakaways from here, but riders are starting to push the pace. See on the Rhino riders, Evil Steph, just working hard with the discs wheels on, so we are able to choose wheels in this. It's set bike, but wheels are free, as you can't put on gravel wheels on a road bike or mountain bike wheels on it. So you see some slight different tactics, and with the disc setup, might be targeting the sprint or a long breakaway. So they are getting a bit of a distance over the group, and the group probably wants to start to think about reacting now, as 18-20 metres with a couple of riders will make a difference. For those who aren't aware, we're on Pack Dynamics 4 now, and that has a big impact on super tucking, which we might see later on this downhill. This downhill doesn't quite get to the speeds for super tuck, but there is the potential, if they push hard, to just about get there, possibly save some. With Pack Dynamics 4, essentially, if you're in draft, it's based on a specific number of draft, whatever Zwift decide to calculate as a metric. But when you have a certain amount of draft, you can't super tuck. So generally, if there's 2 riders in front of you or more, you're not able to super tuck. So in a group, you've got no chance. Whereas the front rider of the group, or more importantly, a breakaway of 1 or 2 riders, can all super tuck. And so they can maintain, it's not going to be the same speed. The group is still going to go quicker as you'd expect, but it's not this huge significant advantage that wipes out any kind of gap that we used to see. It will take a gap of 3-4 seconds down quite quickly, but if you have a gap of 10, 15, 20 seconds going into a downhill, it's not suddenly going to be wiped out by a group. And so we'll see a lot more in maybe London especially, I think, when the speeds are really high on the downhill and the group has a significant boost. Because the speeds are so high, there's a real massive impact of cycling or washing machining, whatever you want to call it, at the front, where one rider just pushes past another and another and another, and it keeps changing as riders hit the back, build momentum, hit the front, and just carry that speed, and getting the speed just keeps going up and up and up. I see groups hitting 100 kilometers an hour sometimes on the downhill of London if they're trying hard. And so, on a climb like Box Hill, where, maybe you're making 10, 15 seconds, 20 seconds in your category over another rider who's strong, but maybe not quite as fit, maybe not quite as strong at 5 minutes, or tired from earlier efforts. That 10-15 seconds, if you're in a group, can just be wiped out instantly, kind of disincentivized, breaking away up there. But now there's definitely the opportunity to, as you can super tuck just as well as they can, and the group will be slowed down a bit, they'll hold that gap away. So I think we'll see it happen more on those high-speed descents, especially where, it's a climb. When you see the likes of the epic KOM, Innsbruck, as we come through the castle here, people starting to push away a little bit. We see the likes of Innsbruck, those gaps that you take out there, a minute, 2 minutes, it won't make much difference there because the group is generally so strung out. Yes, if there's a big bunch, it will take a few people, but ultimately the people breaking away at the front always are going to break away and will always try to break away. But on those shorter 5-7 minute climbs, likes of the Volcano maybe as well, people tend not to want to, because they know the group's just going to catch them on the downhill, or at least take most of that time to make it not worthwhile. So I think that's what's going to have the biggest impact in terms of that downhill descending disadvantage relatively compared to the previous pack night. So it looked like we've lost 1 rider off the back, but generally it's kept quite together. There were some hard kicks there as we come downhill, and we're going to be into the breakaway bray reverse soon. Just get the segment up just so you can see it. So it's first across the line segment. You can see it just slowly winding, slide uphill coming. And that's why you want to just stay towards the back of the group, especially when it's so tight here. 48, 49 riders. Just want to stay a little bit towards the back and start to move through when it gets steep. See one of the Team NL riders going very hard, very early here. Zealand from Team NL. Rogers from Powerpuff instantly responding. And that's the problem. He didn't get that 5 meter gap, so Rogers is able to jump on his wheel and push through. But again, now Rogers is going to be in the wind, and possibly a little bit too early. I expect we might see some riders. See Bukok from Electric Spirit pushing through hard. Quevedo from Foudre coming through as well. And that's why the advantage of being in the draft there. But Dickinson's responded. And Dickinson's going to come through for Powerpuff's dirt. It's real strong. Possibly working with his teammate Rogers there on comms. He's going to come through for first. Sly and Bukok coming through second. Smink from Team NL taking third. Another Team NL there. But big points for the Powerpuff dirt there. 3 riders in that top 10. Team NL are there as well. Not quite sure which team is which for them yet. I assume this Team NL gold in the normal... see that we can see the two different Team NL kits there. One with the stripes across the lower back, one just with the blue on the lower back. Again, so they had a little bit of a mix group there of Team NL riders, so it'll be quite even, I suspect, with their first team and Dirty Powerpuffs. But good performance there. Now it showed the real importance of just sitting in a little bit. See Doug Morris, not quite sure if that's the Doug Morris, one of the founders, but riding for ZR Scott. Now as we come on the downhill, we've got a little bit of a breather. It's a slight 1-3% false flats all the way up, and then we hit the breakaway bray, the Sker Summit North. It's the dirt section. There's only about 2.5 kilometers between these two segments, and that's really important when you think how much recovery that is for these riders. Less than 5 minutes after just doing 2 punchy efforts. It's gonna hurt. And they've got a chase group that they might want to hold away. So it really split up here. See Steve Fenn from Dirty Powerpuff. Two of the Fujo riders, one of the Team NL riders. A couple of the PCH guys. So there's definitely reason for you to push as one of the Fujo riders leads it off at the front. That 5-second gap is more than achievable to close it back down. Again, it'll depend what this front group's doing. They have the numbers. 25 odd riders in it. They can definitely stay away if they want to. See ZR Scott sending a couple of riders towards the front. We've got a Rhino rider leading at the moment. You'll see Dickinson there just sitting towards the back. Looks uncomfortable, 174 BPM. It's definitely hurting. It looks like he's in control of that. Maybe just trying to rest as much as possible, sitting towards the back. Recovering those legs. Looks like that chase group isn't getting any closer. We've got a little steeper section here, but it's going to be quite important, that gap, as we come through the line of for the start of the FTS segment. So with it being FTS, it's just the fastest times through the segment. And so if you're 5 seconds back on the road, coming through that banner and you can jump across, then that's a huge advantage in the FTS standings. Well, I'm surprised to see the likes of these Fujo riders pushing hard here over the top. It'd be much, much better just sitting up now, relaxing for a few seconds, leaving that 5-second gap to be there, and then working really hard on the climb to jump across as quickly as possible. See, they're going to cross the line maybe, what, 20 meters back? Yep, 20 meters. And, you know, that's going to be seconds, well, not even a second at these speeds. See, they're already jumping on, whereas the rest of the riders in this group definitely to look out for, as they're going to have a huge advantage in terms of time, maybe 2-3 seconds. So if they can make it over in the front few riders, they don't even have to necessarily sprint for the banner at the top of this segment to take FTS. So that could be a big boost for their team. See some riders really pushing hard. Levinson from ZR Scott sending it to begin with. 7 watts per kilo is absolutely massive starting this climb. Won't be sustainable, but real impressive push from him there, holding up his speed, and it's just stretched the group out no end. If you look on the mini-map, try and get a long view for it. Everyone's still in contact, everyone's still drafting, but that's a huge, huge spread across the group so early on in this climb. As he's holding up that pace. It's an interesting tactic, especially with some of the strength of Team NL across the board. I'd have expected to see Team NL doing that, pushing the pace hard, especially because they have a lot of the kind of riders towards the top end of that watt per kilo fitness. Or ZR Scott, you know, they're still strong, but they might be slightly further down. Apologise, that's Donnie Morris that we're seeing, not quite Doug Morris for ZR Scott. But yeah, ZR Scott really pushing the pace. Possibly maybe might be wanting to get on the front to dictate the pace, but I'd be surprised to see them doing that 7 watts per kilo. And they are dropping riders out. This one, the kind of difficulties. See, you've got 2 of the Team NL Gold riders behind them. There's and 1 more from that team. No. 3 more from the other Team NL team in that front group with them. See the little kicker here. It's really important to push hard up there. But there's only 4 ZR Scott riders in this front group. So maybe it is in their favour to push the pace as long as they can keep those riders on. But otherwise they're just helping those NL riders break away from the rest. As you see, on them pushing hard at the front now, taking advantage of their fitness and really sending it. It's all uphill from here. Only really flattens out for a few seconds at 1-2%. We see the leaders starting to push off. Levinson from ZR Scott working hard. Two of the Team Enna. Dutch riders going as well. And one of the Fuori riders has managed to jump on with them. So it looks like these four up the road, Levinson's not quite made it on. Just sinking back into this little chase group. I think there's 3 of them, 4 of them there. Righty from Powerpuff. Dirt. Looks like one of them might be TNL Gold. Sorry, Southborough Wheelers even. Thought Gold with the Bumblebee kit. Thought he might be getting across there. But not quite. This is on the steeper part, see the 6%. You want to do some damage here. And if you're going long, this is about a minute effort for these riders at this pace to the finish. Maybe just less at this point. So this is the opportunity to kind of be pushing 7-8 watts per kilo if they're going slow. But it looks like they're sitting in now. Sitting in is maybe a bit ambitious to say when, you know, they're well above their 5-minute power, some of them. Especially 5.8 watts per kilo as we saw there. But they're going to be saving their legs slightly for the sprint. Maybe not going long, it seems. Just taking advantage of the draft of the rider ahead of C. Levinson's making it back up in that front group. Obviously, there are 2 Levinsons. That makes more sense. Apologies. See, A. Levinson in the front group. R. Levinson trying to bridge across them and coming through as well. So they're double teaming here on the Team L rider at the front. How are they going to play this out? Getting close to the line. It's important they kick and get that gap, especially depending on where they start in the group. See, A. Levinson pushing 8 watts per kilo. He's going to come through first there. I don't think his brother, cousin, son, who knows, is going to get quite back on coming through in 4th. But what's going to matter is the times. More importantly, it'll be interesting to see if we have anyone jumping through there. It looks fairly consistent as you see on the map, but it's really stretched out. Aside from these front 6 riders, there's big gaps all the way down the field. 8 seconds to the next group. So I don't think any of those riders in that second group, as they came into the climb, have bridged across. Now, importantly, it's not too far to go again to the next segment. We're looking about 4.5 kilometers. So it's going to be possible for these 6 to stay away, especially if you look on the road how separated it is. This is the first main group we're seeing, around 20th position. They're quite nice and tight. They've got another chase group behind who are going to really want to be pushing on here to jump across, get inside. The draft, see Simpson from ZR Scott working hard. Little push, but it's left a little bit too late to get across. And he's just going to have to solo for a bit here. He's playing it, well, she's playing it really well. And pushing on the flats, relaxing on the downhill exactly as they should do. Really good to see. Pushing out the base of each of them to maintain speed, but they might as well just jump on with this group behind as they come through. Take advantage. See that front group just staying away. It looks like a much bigger gap now, about 15 seconds perhaps. 17 seconds from this front group of 6. It's all come together. Versus a couple of the chase groups is bunching up. And forming these little bunches are really important. The deciding factor a lot of time in places is which bunch you manage to get in. See here, Schmink and Jensen. Powerpuff Dirt versus Team L. The difference between managing to get on can be huge. Because if you don't get on, especially midway through the race, you're going to fall back all the way to the group behind. And that could be dropping you 5-10 possible place in the overall standings, if not more, depending on what happens. So it's really important when you're in this situation, you just got to commit all in to get that group, especially with the downhill coming. See, Jensen's just in no man's land there. Not quite close enough to the chase group, not quite far enough away from the lead group to kind of not want to try, but I think it's just settled up now and ready to jump onto that big chase group coming through. You see Schmink there from TNL hasn't quite got on. It's really tough to watch. They're consistently putting out 4-5 watts per kilo to try and get back on. They see a kick of 8. It's really impressive, but it needs to be a kick of 8. And if they'd gone all in early, they could have been resting this entire time, whereas now they're working most of the way on the downhill. Probably about 10 meters back now. They're going to get there. They're going to make it. But it was at what cost? They've done a lot of work on this downhill. They've only got maybe one minute before we hit the... Well, probably even less than that till we hit the climb. 30 seconds. And they could have been resting for 2-3 minutes there if they'd really kicked from the base of the downhill. At the base of this downhill. And just got back on. Sacrificed a lot of energy short term, but gained it back long term. So he joined back with the front group. So it's 2 the Team NL Gold Riders. Got Barry Van Leeuwen and chasing them down from Team NL. But it looks like it's 2 of the 4th place Team NL team here, judging by the kits. I'll have to double check, but that's interesting to see. And I think it's Barry who's in their top team, so that's going to be very different in the standings if it stays this way, with 2 of the ZR Scott riders up there. So it's going to be big points for them. What's important, they've still got another foul section to come up, as you can see on your screen. We've got the breakaway break coming up just after this, and so these riders are going to take those top 6 spots. There's good points for them without even having to put a sprint in. I'm sure some of them will kick a little bit to fight for position, but if you're in this group, you know, you're fighting for 1st to 6th. That's 3 points difference. Like, unless you're, you know, sure you're going to get 1st, you're almost better just saving your legs for the finish. And for ZR Scott, it's a fantastic position to just guarantee 2 of those places. And see this group starting to come back together. On the second group on the road is getting much bigger now. Looks like that bigger group is caught on. See Schmenke again off the back, struggling away. Not quite sure what's going on with that. They're not having the best time. I hope they can make it on before the downhill. See him kicking again, but again, sometimes just a little bit too late. They should be pushing really hard here. See him dropping down to 0 watts per kilo for a few seconds. They needed to kick really, really hard, get back on before this so they can carry all that speed, benefit from all that draft from the group. See him pushing 10 watts per kilo now, but again, even if they make it on, they could have done that earlier and recovered. I'm not sure what's going on. Perhaps they're having some trainer difficulties. It's very spiky, their power. I would explain why they've found themselves off the back again. Really tough to watch. So they're going to be dropping back to this chase group, which is big. But that's a lot of potential places gone with this group being, you know, 15, 20 riders. There's a potential to come the likes of 10th versus 30th. So that's a huge, huge drop off in points if you can keep with them. And I'll be interested, only 4 of this group are going to score points here. So again, tactically, it might be better just be sitting in and thinking about it. You know, if you think you're strong, it is important because those points are big. That, you know, you're still 5, 6 points for those positions. See Levinson really pushing hard for ZR Scott here. The other one going as well, possibly using him as a little bit of a lead out. And they've broken away from the 2 Dutch riders. And Southpaw Wheeler, who hasn't quite gone for it, just sat in. So again, possibly playing to see, is he going to come through on the line? Oh, that's bad timing from the Fuji rider. They had it in the bag and just eased off a little bit too early. Again, that was an interesting way to finish it. Because you know that some of the riders don't need to push there. The Team NL riders not even contesting the point. Well, they're getting points, but they're not contesting the top points there. They're saving their legs. They went early for the ZR Scott guys, and that made a big difference. They could get away and rest earlier. So Arlemsen just put a little kick in, then could just glide over the line comfortably in 3rd place. Looking back on that group, looks like Team NL scoring again. Powerpuff Dirt scoring, the other Team NL team. So the one we're looking at now is 2 riders in the front group. We're wearing there's ZRL winner's helmet. Oh, I apologise, that's not it. Is it? It is. But that 22-second gap is going to be tough to overcome. It's definitely doable, especially with the climb coming up. Just get the map in the corner of your screen for you. Might better. You can see the segment map at least. That's on this left-hand side of it. See, we're just about midway between the 2 climbs. Maybe just beyond midway. Actually, definitely just beyond midway. If you're coming to the castle, this steep section. There's the big climb, the south side of the Sker Summit to come. And so it's possible for this gap, 21 seconds, to be closed down if this front group don't work hard and don't work together. Just taking a quick look at some of the riders in there. We have Wim Peters, the WTNL Gold rider at the back of this group of 6 at the moment. Peter, one of the A's in this group. in the old system of points. But he seems to be kind of a fit rider, but maybe not as sprinty as some of the others. There's a 6.8 watts per kilo. So, or maybe a trainer limitation. So that's, that's why we have this. There's riders who are fitter here, riders who are who are a bit punchier, and it makes for much more interesting racing. As we come into this, we might see very different tactics. Some riders wanting to punch hard, just to kind of tire out the people who don't and make them chase on and waste on energy. Whereas the likes of Peters we see here, they're just might want to just take the front, set at an unsustainable pace from the other ride, especially with this long 2, 3, 4% climb that we're coming up now before we hit the steeper sections. If we get the steeper sections intact, see the ZR Scott riders, Andrew Levinson, Richard Levinson, who have strong sprints. Vin Peters with a stronger sprint. Quevedo, Jean-Louis Quevedo, Foudre. Again, really strong sprint. 12.3 watts per kilo over 1,000 watts. It's going to play into their favour on the punchy part of this climb. The south side is much punchier on really steep section and a little bit of a grind and a punch up to the line. And so you'll play into their hands a lot. This is exactly where you want to see the fitter riders, who are maybe better climbers, a bit stronger over longer distance, just starting to eke out the pace, make the other riders hurt, and ensure that they don't have any kind of sprint to drop you on the next bit. So you might have been paying attention to the right hand bar there. You can see that that gap's come down to 17 seconds. See Evil Steph from Rhino pushing the pace. AMAC from ZR Scott as well, just keeping above 4 watts per kilo for the most part of that climb. And it's slowly eating away at that gap. See Rhino doing a lot of hard work here. They're currently in 6th place, but with 2 riders towards the front of that group, there's plenty of opportunity for them to move up in the standings if they can get across that gap, especially when it comes to the climb. So making it as accessible as possible. When we hit the base of that climb, it's going to be really important. See Righty here, Powerpuff, Dirt doing as well. A couple of riders have dropped off the back, and it is getting stretched out here. See another Southborough Wheeler rider. There's just a whole string back. A couple of people have managed to group up at least down the road. Another group of Rhino riders there. But again, a huge mass of them in this second group, sorry, on the road. More ZR Scott riders. Not so many Team NL that you'd expect to see. So it's turning into possibly not a great day for Team NL. Especially for one of their teams. The team we're watching now with the stripes across the front. We've got quite a few riders in that second group, but no one in the front group. As you just turn left before we hit into the south side of the Skur climb. You can see him, the lovely view of some. Although I like to think people work on Zwift imagine Scotland to be like. So here we come into the steep section. So it is the currently 4th place Team NL team who have 2 of their riders in the front group. So it's going to be very important for the standing, especially for ZR Scott here. So we punch our way up here. No one's quite sending it. Possibly have expected to see the Fuji rider here really sending on the start of there, getting a gap over the group and trying to go solo, because a group of 6 probably isn't big enough to work together. Maybe the 2 Levinsons might work together to chase you down, but if you can get a gap possibly with them, that's going to be very big for your chances at the finish. See, here we go, Evil Steph really kicking exactly as they should. Straight into the start of that climb, just taking instant time out the group behind. Look at the gap they've taken already out of the group, just because they've played it right, and they can just relax on the rest of the climb, and they'll still hold a decent advantage. 3 seconds now. They are doing higher numbers than the rest of the group, but it's nothing crazy, especially take 4-second gap over the group so quickly. So really shows the importance of kicking into these uphills and maintaining that speed. Just see one of the Levinsons getting dropped a little bit towards the back, with straight back on responding, possibly not quite concentrating or just not wanting to kick suddenly and surge and waste energy. The pace has been relatively steady up here. You know, it's hard. They're working hard, no doubt about it. See, the heart rate's 192 here on the Levinsons for ZR Scott. 194 even, like, oh, they're definitely sending it and working hard, but they can definitely kick and really try and break away if that's what they wanted to do some damage. See, Evil Steph here, 8 seconds over the group. Not quite sure if they thought maybe there was points on off the segment, or they really are trying to bridge across solo. You'd like to think some of their teammates may have gone with them. So they had at least one, if not two, in this group yet. See a couple of them. Because going solo on this, when they hit the downhill, they're really going to struggle. You see this lead group still work on the downhill exactly as they should. And they've worked hard, they've done damage up the climb, but they want to keep this gap. There's enough time now to go before the finish to recover while doing a bit of work. Looking at 23.4 or so at the finish, kilometers. So 3 and a bit, 4 kilometers to go. 5, 6, 7 minutes, I'd say. And so, yeah, that's plenty of opportunity for them to work, you know, zone 3. Pushing the pace, not allowing the group to get back on, or the solo rider, Evil Steph, to jump across. See, that gap's being instantly brought down to the group just by sheer numbers on the downhill. You see the front riders there doing nothing, still catching. Yeah, it's enough for these riders to kind of still be working, but recover the legs and save themselves for the sprint. You might see on some of these steeper sections them just easing off a little bit. That chase group is looking very ominous. 28 seconds is probably too much to overcome, unless there's a kind of team effort, groups them really pushing hard. But if you're in that front group, you're definitely going to be keeping an eye on that gap and thinking about it. Especially as you can see him on the mini-map. You know, as we get closer and closer to the finish, tactics start to come into play a bit more. You might see riders just not wanting to be at the front, really dropping down the pace. Saw it earlier in Platinum Plus. Once they're there, people want to save as much as possible, so there's opportunities just to break away, especially solo. If teams aren't necessarily thinking that they're competing with you as a team, they'll regularly just let single riders go and focus on their main opposition, when in fact the best move is to jump on their wheel, try and get with them. You know, unless you're really confident and comfortably ahead on points, it's always worth fighting for the points. If you're really comfortably ahead, you know, it's just more points that your opposition can't gain, so fair enough letting them go. But it's a good opportunity when single riders go, just to get on their wheel, go as a pair. It's not big enough group that everyone else is going to respond to it and worry. But it's, you know, it's a good opportunity. And working together makes it a huge difference, especially with the new pack dynamics with much more draft. You'll find that double breakaways, triple breakaways, 2-3 riders, far more likely to stick it than just solo riders going. As there's a big advantage for managing to sit in a wheel, which will allow riders to do 5-6 watts per kilo off the front, then sit in, do 4, maybe even less, in third wheel, then rotate to another punch, and manage to do that for 5 minutes. They'll only average, you know, below their 5-minute PBs for a lot of them, but they'll have taken a huge distance out of a group. So we're coming into the city now. We've got the Clyde kicker just around this corner to the right. You might see some early attacks going up there. See Jean-Luc here pushing hard towards the front. Thought he might be making an early bunch there to try and break away. While he has the biggest sprint in this group, it's definitely worth trying to go long here and just taking advantage of that. Even if you just manage to drop on the other riders, he's at a slight disadvantage because of the other riders being in pairs. So they can work some team tactics, possibly sending one rider on the long attack, one rider to stick in the bunch and draft any chasers as by himself. So you want to take advantage of the gradient. No amount of team tactics can deal with a 10% gradient. There's no draft available for the rest behind, so you might as well kick hard. Unless they have the legs to keep with you, that's going to be it. See Levinson pushing again, but again, nothing quite happening there. They're putting big numbers, but nothing to kind of worry or trouble anyone. So it's going to be this group of 6 into the finish. Got another little kick around this corner, but at this point it's a bit too close to a downhill and a finish to go long from here. I've seen a few people pushing hard up here to try and do it, but unless you've already got the gap. See, oh, Levinson going for it there. So, again, you can see, easy enough there. Jean-Luc didn't really do anything. Like, they were only doing 4 or 5 watts per kilo, and they're easily able to hold the wheel just because of the speed you're carrying through and then straight into a downhill. That's what I was trying to say, you know, it's possible, but I wouldn't want to try and make a move there. If you've got the energy, you want to do it much earlier or much later. So what I hope to see, possibly from ZR Scott, sending one of them up the road. Especially if you've got a rider who's a lot sprintier than the other, a lot punchier than the other. Send a fitter rider up the road here. Use these 2 bumps. Go hard up them and just try and hold that gap to the finish. And the other rider can just sit on the wheels. Yes, sacrificing one, but they're guaranteed 6th place now. It's worth fighting for that 1st place, especially if otherwise they're going to come in 6th anyway. So I might just want to sit on a wheel, but again, everyone's sitting in here. This is again where we might see moves going. There we go, see what Levinson. Levinson there winding up. This is going to be a long surge into the finish. Be important to see if anyone can get his wheel. If he gets the wheel, then it's all to play for still. There we go. Jean-Louis managed to grab hold of the wheel. Levinson still doing 7 watts per kilo. But Jean-Louis on his wheel, taking advantage of his draft, and can use this downhill to punch through. And this is where it's going to come in handy. Oliver's timed it very well, though, for Southwell Wheelers. I'm not sure he's going to have the legs to quite make it, but he had perfect timing on that section. We see another one, the Levinson's coming from deep. It's going to be too little too late. With a Jean-Louis for Foudre taking the win. Levinson for Zedar in 2nd. Not quite sure on the rest of the line. So the other Levinson coming through in 5th. Then going to the 2nd group. Evil Steph might be able to hold off the group, but they're definitely going to be caught by Saris. H-Size from Team NL coming through hot there. So a couple of riders going very early, but they've all seemed to be taking. It seems like people are on their wheel. Where there'll be another 1-2 here. No, not another, but 1-2 here. Foudre up there again, so it's going to be a good result for Foudre. But Team NL managing to grab a couple more riders over there for what will be the team that was 1st in the league standings. Not sure they will be now, though. See Douglas coming through on his own, managing to hold off the people behind. See Sam from Southborough Wheeler really chasing down, though. This gap is only 8 seconds unless Doug pushes on. That's going to get caught. The speed that they've carried over, you can see it instantly. It's doing the same speed just after the climb. Sam can kick again. Maybe, but you see Doug's rising up. Doing a little push into the downhill. It's probably going to be a little bit too late now. Sam's just eased off and hasn't got the punch to go again. So Doug's going to come through for 28th there. Looking back, we've got another group of Team NL riders surrounding Haynes for Electric Spirit. And Marsden just back down the road. We've got a little group. I wonder if they've gone for a bit of a long attack there, or if they're being chased down by this group. Interesting attacks here in the finish. 2 different Team NL rides, though, so we might not see any communication at least. See Haynes trying to go early, but again, the momentum's with Team NL. And Smink probably will take this. They've got the draft to come through. They don't need to do as big numbers as Electric Spirit Ride, and they're just going to come through there. Really well played. They got the momentum right. They got the positioning right. And they didn't need to do any extra. They may have had it in the bag for numbers, but they timed it perfectly to ensure that whatever they did, they were coming through 1st of that group. Really well done to them. We've got another group here. 2 Rhino riders. 1 Foudre, 1 Southborough Wheelers, 2 Dirt. So coming into the finish. And with a group of 6, it's about going early. You see a Foudre rider going really hard there. You want to push really hard up here. And when you get to the top, just look back on the numbers. You can see at the bottom of the screen here, I'm using this view so you can see the gap. If you see this at, 6, 7, 8 meters, just keep going, keep sending it. Unless someone's gaining quickly on it, keep sending it, try and hold them off the line. You see Simon here just managed to get back on. And Chabon didn't go, he just had a second guess. And that was enough. He's now in a terrible position for the finish. You see Simon Ferrari finding out with Rogers from Powerpuff. I suspect Rogers will take it here. I'm not quite sure what went on there. It looked like Simon got caught in sticky draft a little bit by Chabon from Fuori. There we go, 1, 2, 3. It's interesting. He seemed to kick through really hard and then just slow up again. I wonder if it was just caught in sticky draft, just easing off, maybe unclipping, something going wrong at the last moment. That was really great finish. And much more interesting to watch with these new categories. It's great to see so many different tactics developing. And on a course like this, where it generally would stay together with the old categories, where everyone's of a similar fitness, and the only difference is the sprints on the kickers, this has opened up a lot more. While people might be in the, you might think some people aren't in the right category that suits them, it's a work in progress, and it creates interesting and different racing. We saw some sprinters making it to the finish, we saw some climbers making it to the finish. That's exactly what we're after. It's great to see the variation and different tactics coming into the race. So thank you very much for joining. I'm going to try and get the results up on the screen for you before we finish off today. So there are the live results. Just refresh it and see if we can get any of the actual finish results. So there we go. Jean-Louis taking first for Fuori. And we had Levinson for ZR Scott. Andrew Levinson taking second. Richard Levinson coming through in fifth. Lee Oliver, Southborough Wheelers, doing really well. Third there, Wim Peters from Team NL. The team that was in fourth, and it's the only way I can refer to them. Same with Peter from Team NL in sixth place. It's a good result for them. And we have the other Team NL team with Hans Saris. Actually, I'm not sure which team Hans was in, but then Barry Van Leeuwen's definitely won the team that was in first to begin with. Then Jean Misha for Fuori. It'll be interesting to see what happens with the results here. So you see two of the Fuori riders really high up in the results. Looking at Waddle, not quite short going on the numbering there, but looking quite high up. But then another two much further down the pack. So their overall score could be significantly lower than, say, ZR Scott, who had two riders in the front group, but Donnie Morris and Gregor Simpson rounding out might be 12th-ish. 5th, 14th-ish. And it's all about the team score. Having one or two great individuals doesn't make a team. And that's what this series is aimed to do, a lot better than previous series. So hopefully we might see that represented in the results today. We've got the prime points instantly up for anyone who really wants to. They might be able to go out and calculate the standings instantly. I'm sure they'll be up on the Dirt Racing Series website shortly afterwards, within a day or so. So you can just take a look down at the points. Now these points aren't necessarily for definite until all the riders have crossed the line. So you might have to wait 5 minutes, as some of those riders further back might have foul points or FTS points. But otherwise it's giving a good kind of overview of how the points are looking. See Team NL doing well, but it's across a variety of teams, which is going to hurt them. Anyway, hopefully other people can work it out, and I'll be back next week for what will hopefully be the Gold 3 category as we take on Chain Chomper. So again, we'll see very different tactics playing out there again. It's generally a very uphill course, but there are punchier sections where you can make it count on the climbs, rather than just being a consistent 4, 5, 6% gradient as you see with some climbs. So there's opportunities for punchy riders to do well as the climbers, but it's definitely going to be one that's favouring those climbers on the slower gravelly sections. Thanks very much for joining. I'll be back next week